Hi there, my name is Ash and I like to draw. But do you know what else I like? Superheroes, especially the slightly more obscure ones. And they don't get much more obscure than the ones you can find in a little series called Dial H for Hero. Dial H for Hero is a series that has been published by DC Comics on and off in various incarnations ever since 1966, with a fairly unique premise for a superhero series. In each version of Dial H for Hero, the protagonist gets their hands on a device called the H-Dial. Should they use it to dial a number that spells the word H-E-R-O, they will temporarily transform into a random superhero and use their powers to save the day. So basically it's Ben 10 nearly 40 years before Ben 10 was ever a thing, with the main difference being that the protagonist has no control over which hero they turn into, and that they never turn into the same hero twice. As I'm sure you can imagine, this means that there have been a lot of characters made for this series, some of which are more strange and unusual than others. Now, I've only really read one run of this comic, namely the much darker and strange Dial H from the New 52, but you guys know me, I get curious about these things. So I went online and tried to look up what other heroes have been made, just to see what other kind of madness they could come up with. And lo and behold, I actually found a whole list of every single hero the H-Dial has summoned through its long career. But it's just that, a list with very few pictures. And that gave me an idea. What would happen if I rolled random names from this list of heroes or villains from the series and tried to create a character only based on that, and then compared them to the original version? Well, why don't we find out? The first name we've got is Poltergeist. Okay, we immediately have a lot to work with here. Poltergeist is not just the title of a fantastic 80s horror movie. It's a German word meaning something along the lines of noisy or knocking spirit, referring to a ghost that throws things around, slams doors, makes awful noises. Really one of the more explosive types of hauntings if you believe in these things. And I mean, hey, spookiness and superheroes have always made for a fun combo. Just ask people like Ghost Rider or Deadman. Now, spooky-themed superheroes tend to be designed as very dark and gritty, and they're usually genuine ghosts, demons, vampires, or what have you. But there's already plenty of those guys running around, and I wanted to go a little bit more traditional with this hero, both in terms of the costume, his powers, and overall personality. So I asked myself, what if instead of an actual ghost, we just have a traditional superhero who simply happens to have a power set that lends itself really well to the Poltergeist theme? So, with my pen in hand, I drew a floating guy and started playing with some mild cartoonishly ghostly aspects. I gave him the classic blank white eyes and spooky hood, and made sure to give him some thin wispy strands, similar to the tails you'd see on old cartoon ghosts. And speaking of old cartoon ghosts, I also gave him some chains. I like to think they keep him looking spooky enough to be scary if he came at you looking for a fight, but soft enough that he doesn't look too terrifying. Plus, you know, they might make a good weapon. As for the colors, plain white seemed too boring, so I went the way of Ragman from DC Comics and covered him in soft green, making him kind of look like he's made of ectoplasm. Now, for his power set, I thought about the whole throwing things around and making noises thing, and suddenly it hit me. Telekinesis! Oh, and flight, of course. We gotta get that ghostly floating in there. But I like to imagine that this guy's telekinesis and his flight works by sort of whipping up a bit of wind around objects so they whirl around the place, instead of just classic clean telekinesis. That way, the wind he summons could make some spooky noises that fit the noisy theme, and even whip his chains around for dramatic effect. He'd be a little bit too basic without a symbol though, so I tried to give him a stylized spinal cord / ribcage thing down his chest that melts into the hood. Although I might actually have failed. It looks a little bit more like some kind of arachnid. Too bad there's already one Ghost Spider in Marvel Comics, huh? But, all that aside, here you have Poltergeist, the spooky hero. Nice and simple. I like him. Now let's take a quick look at what the original Poltergeist looked like. Poltergeist showed up in the Silver Age 80-page giant issue from the year 2000 in a story called SOS to Nowhere, written by the legendary Mark Waid and drawn by Eduardo Barreto, and Okay, I mean, I kind of see what they were going for here, but really? This is your Poltergeist superhero? What's the point? Like, is he actually intangible or just invisible? Did you really just create a superhero whose only power is that you can't see his tiny titan even when he's going commando? Well, no. His power is apparently making things backfire on people, which is, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think I like my version better, but hey, I'll let you be the judge. Well, time's a wasting, so let's roll again. This time we've got Captain Saturn. Well, now that is a name that lends itself perfectly to a classic Silver Age style superhero. So of course I'm not gonna draw that. Instead of just going Saturn equals rings and leaving it at that, I decided to do a bit of reading on the place. Turns out that Saturn is very far from the sun and thus one of the colder planets, meaning that those rings are actually made from ice and rock. It's also a pretty huge planet, even if mostly gaseous. So hey, there's our power set. Ice, cold winds, and being big.
I'm big.
At first I wanted to go a little bit pulpy space hero with this one. You know, stuff like Flash Gordon, Adam Strange, those kinds of guys. But it was while looking up various retro sci-fi comics that I saw these bulky astronaut suits that I really liked. And so my idea for Captain Saturn changed a bit, but also really started to take shape. In this little story of mine, we have ourselves a classic space age hero from the 60s, sent on a long experimental flight through space to examine Saturn, thus lovingly being dubbed Captain Saturn by the public. But as it always happens in these stories, something goes wrong on the mission and Captain Saturn disappears, presumed dead by everyone on Earth. Until the moment he mysteriously reappears decades later. But something has changed. Somewhere in his journey he got exposed to those good old cosmic rays that the Fantastic Four would like to tell you about, and he has become a large imposing figure, constantly exuding a strong cold gas. A gas that is now only contained within his suit. Still the heroic man he was, but confined within his suit and trying to keep his cold at bay, he takes up superheroing as Captain Saturn, keeping the public safe from both foreign threats and his own freezing presence. I mean, I don't know about you, but I love it. There's something very Jack Kirby-esque about this kind of tragic monster hero. I mean, he's basically a heroic Mr. Freeze. Still, just having a freezy guy in an astronaut suit is a little boring, and I do still want to at least acknowledge Saturn's rings. So I decided to at least give him a fancy belt and even add a bit of asymmetry to the design by letting a big ring of ice protrude from his suit. Like, maybe he can let out enough that it slips through tiny cracks in the suit and basically make icy weapons and armor for himself. Yeah, it's a bit unlike most superheroes and it's not nearly as classic and to the point as the name implies, but that's kind of what I like about it. Now let's take a look at what the original comic came up with, shall we? We'll just flip right through the pages of Adventure Comics number 488, written by Bob Rozakis and drawn by Carmine Infantino, and yep, that's about what I expected. I get it, you want to do the ring thing, but I don't know if this really sells the Saturn part either. He looks more like a big atom. I'm tempted to call this one a tie, but hey, at least my guy has an interesting backstory. Alright, we're giving this another roll and landing on Naiad. Well, that's a name that instantly tells me what direction we're gonna go. For those that don't know, Naiad is a particular type of nymph, that is to say a nature spirit in the shape of a beautiful woman. More specifically, a Naiad is a water nymph, similar to how a Dryad is a wood nymph, and so on. Now, water heroes are tricky. You don't want to end up just creating another Aquaman, but you don't want to just draw a mermaid either. I mean, yeah, I know I'm Danish, but come on, I have some standards. So I started thinking about how elements are usually portrayed in comics and how characters with fire powers tend to have fiery hair. And I just thought, why can't we do that with water? The basic pitch in my head quickly became Starfire, but with water instead of fire, and I really liked the idea of her hair becoming a sort of water tail. But from there, I have to admit, I found designing her a little tough. The one thing I knew I wanted right away was a little bit of asymmetry, and that's when I came up with the wave traveling down from her shoulder to her midsection. Yeah, if you can't tell, I love to add just a little bit of asymmetry to otherwise simple designs. Go ahead and sue me. But again, I didn't want it to be that simple, and I sort of ended up going the classic underwater hero routes. Atlantean skin color, a few bits of golden armor, all that stuff. I did at least give them some spikes to bring to mind stuff like sea urchins and conch shells though. And I do like to think that the gilded leg wraps and the colors end up sort of implying a mermaid tail pattern without just, making her a mermaid. So I'm happy with that much. But yeah, I gotta admit, it's a little all over the place. I don't dislike it, I think it works just fine as a costume, but it could definitely use a few extra revisions to really nail it. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I have a feeling the professional comic artists from back then are gonna beat me on this one. Let's open up a copy of The New Adventures of Superboy number 33, written by Cary Bates and drawn by Kurt Schaffenbarger to find out... That's just some lady in a bathing suit. The ability to summon sea monsters is pretty cool, though. Yeah, they might both be dots, but hey, at least I was trying. Next. The dice have spoken, and this time we're doing... Sulphur. Oh, geez, you're expecting me to know chemistry now? Alright, fine. Help me out here, Wikipedia. Oh, okay, so sulfur is basically just the accurate term for brimstone, better known as burning rock. And, you know, the kind of stuff they say that hell is full of and that dragon breath smells like. Yeah, I can work with that. Now, if I'm understanding this correctly, sulfur usually takes the shape of small yellow rocks that turn into a dark red liquid when melted, and then recrystallize if allowed to cool down. This is a case where the base power set pretty much completely informs the rest of the design, because my mind went straight to a very famous character who has heated, malleable rock arms. The Super Skrull, who combines all the powers of the Fantastic Four. Wow, you guys really found a way to snake your way into this video twice now, huh? Mind your own business. Don't you have like a movie premiere to focus on? Anyway, my base idea is to have a guy whose arms can be encased in sulfur, basically treating them like rock arms that grant him super strength and durability. But he can also heat these arms up in order to turn them into stretchy, burning liquid arms. I like to imagine that the catch to this power set is that when he heats his arms up, he loses the super strength, and he has to wait for them to cool back down in order to use it again. So he actually has to get a little bit strategic about when he uses which power set. This is a fighting style that sounds pretty brutish and requires exposed arms, so I had the idea to break away from the latex and superhero suits for a bit, and instead give him a sort of sleeveless jumpsuit. Like maybe he's an escaped prison inmate or some kind of miner. I think he's definitely a villain though. And you know what? Just because we're going the tough guy route, let's give him a real biker beard and haircut too. Let's make him look like someone who'd already be up for a fight even if he didn't have flaming rock arms. And then subvert your expectations when he turns out to have a second set of more versatile powers that he's smarter about using than you'd think after just looking at him. Yeah, I think this might be the fastest one of these names gave me an idea. I mean, this guy doesn't exactly look like a supervillain, but I just like to think he hasn't gotten a proper suit yet. He's new on the scene, and he's about to make a name for himself. And that name is Sulphur. But what about the original comic? What does their Sulphur look like? Well, I'll just head on over to Adventure Comics number 486 and let famous writer Marv Wolfman and penciler Don Heck show us. Oh, okay. Wow, she's really boring. I mean, she basically just looks like Flame Girl. That's pretty lame. Especially in an issue that's full of cool-looking demons and stuff. Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and give myself the point on that one. Alright, I think I have one more character left in me, and this time we're getting... Grandfather Clock. Oh, that sure is a name, but I think I can work with it. When I hear Grandfather Clock as a name for a character, you know, those big old-fashioned clocks with a pendulum, my mind goes to the concept of Father Time, an old wise man who sees and documents all of time. But really, his depictions are all the frickin' same. Old man, long Gandalf beard, long robe, usually a scythe. It's just not very interesting. So instead, I'm going to go with more of a grizzled old man. Someone who has quite literally seen it all and who cannot be surprised anymore. And instead of being all badass and mighty and magical, I'll make him lean forward like he's just tired of it all. Like he knows that whatever his task is, it will never actually end. Now obviously I did want to include the Grandfather Clock theme at least a little bit, but I mean, it's a giant ornate block of wood. What am I gonna do with that? I was considering going the classic ways and have gears and clock hands all over the place, but nah, it didn't really feel right. And then it hit me. Use the pendulum. Instead of being some kind of wizardy guy waving his hands around and doing time magic, I imagine this guy swinging around a heavy pendulum that he uses equal part as a scepter and a walking stick. Like it's something he can lean on and kick ass with. And who knows, maybe it's literally swinging the pendulum that activates whatever time powers he has. Of course, I had to put some clocks on him eventually, but I did want to try something that I don't really see done on time-traveling characters a lot. I added the actual numbers on a clock face and wrapped them around his chest and arms, almost like the line on a pair of superhero gloves. I think it's kind of cool, almost like his whole body is a clock in and of itself. I also really wanted some old-timey beard that wasn't just a full-on Merlin, so I settled on some mutton chops and mixed them with slightly more modern, messy hair. I think it also implies that he used to be a normal man before he somehow became Grandfather Clock, and he just never bothered to change his beard or style his hair in any way since. Because, I mean, what do fashion trends really mean to a man who can see all of time? His colors, I admit, I took mostly from obscure DC villain Time Commander, probably best known for his appearance in Animal Man, where he made for a very interesting kind of madman villain. I don't know, I just really like this combination of purple and white. There's something regal yet a little bit overworldly about it. Now, time travelers in comics are often villains. I mean, just think of Kang the Conqueror and Kronos and all those guys. But I don't want that for this guy. Yet, I don't think I want him to be a hero either. I imagine him more like an event character. You know, the kind of guy that shows up when everything hits the fan and some major cosmic nonsense goes down in the big superhero verses. Someone like The Watcher or Access or Pariah. I will admit that the shoulder pads come off as a bit random, and I might change those if I ever draw this guy again, but I still really like what I ended up with here. He just gives off exactly all the vibes I want him to. Exhaustion but grit. Age but strength. And determination to do whatever his status requires of him. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I think this dude is just plain cool. And hopefully so is the original Grandfather Clock, seen in JSA Classified number 25, written by Tony Bedard and drawn by Dennis Kelly. Oh god! I guess refusing to ever watch the live-action version of Beauty and the Beast was the right call. Clocksworth looks pissed! This guy looks like a rejected Power Rangers villain found his way into a mascot horror game. Christ, he's terrifying! But at least we get a really funny panel of him sucking Green Lantern in the face. I do like that. I mean, I should have expected this. Dial H characters, especially the more modern ones, tend to really lean into the absurdity of it all, but I don't know, I think mine fits the whole superhero idea just a little bit better. But the really important question is, what do you think of the little squad we've built here? Would you read a comic starring any of these guys? Did I do better than the originals? Do you have a particular favorite? And do you want me to take another crack at more names from this big old list? Go right ahead and put any and all answers to those questions in the comment section below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel while you're down there, so you'll be the first to know whenever a new art video pops up. I'll see you in the next one, folks, and bye bye.